The day before my actual big surgery, I woke up early in the morning. I got ready. My foster parents drove me to the hospital. It took 2 hours to get there, and it still felt like it was early in the morning. I was stressed. I hadn't slept. I found myself sitting in a waiting room that I had never seen before, but that I would get to know very well after that day. There was something that needed to happen before I could be admitted to the hospital. I wasn't sure what that was. I saw a gurney come out and whisk kids away. They didn't return to the waiting room. I figured that's what I was waiting for. Sure enough, the gurney came for me. The folks pushing it around knew who I was. It's not like I'm not super easy to describe or anything. At 17, I was also the oldest kid at that children's hospital. But it caught me weird that they didn't need to call my name to find me. They told me to get on the gurney and lay down. They rolled me out of the waiting room and into a conference room right next door. All this fanfare to get me to the room next door? To be fair, some kids in that waiting room couldn't walk. In the conference room sat a collection of doctors, or people who looked like doctors, and when they started talking, they certainly sounded like doctors. I was asked to sit up with my legs hanging over the side of the gurney. Several doctors approached me. They asked me to lift my right arm. They moved it in all kinds of different ways, looking at it from every angle, and talking to each other, and writing on their clipboards. I was tired. I was stressed, but I was also somewhat inquisitive, so I tried to pay attention to what they were saying. The doctors had all sat down at that point, and were talking to each other about something. One of the doctors noticed me listening in. She paused the conversation and asked, "Do you know what we're talking about?" I was a 17-year-old kid. They were clearly using anatomical terms and discussing medical terminology that I didn't know. I didn't know what they were talking about, but I was a 17-year-old kid. Was I going to admit to an adult that I didn't understand? I said, "Yes, I understand what you're talking about." I had no clue. They resumed their discussion, and a few minutes later, I was asked to lay down on the gurney again. I was rolled out into the hallway. Right in front of the conference room doors sat another little room with a window. The window could be opened and closed from inside the room. Over the window, big words were posted. "Check in." And that was where I was admitted to the hospital. As a kid, the paperwork for everything seemed like more than was necessary. As an adult, it still seems like a lot sometimes. Near the end of the paperwork, a nurse approached me with a clipboard. He introduced himself and said cheerily, "I see that you're getting an Ilazarov tomorrow." I couldn't believe the words that came out of his mouth. I said, "No, I'm here to do a cut and paste operation." "That's funny," the nurse said. "That's what it says right here." I blurted out, "You're obviously reading that wrong." I grabbed his clipboard. I found my name. I followed the lines to the word Ilazarov. I knew what an Ilazarov was. On the day that the previous head of the hospital kicked me out, I got a grand tour of the place first. During the tour, I went to the boys' wing. On the far end of the wing, I met several boys. They had Ilazarovs attached to their legs. I immediately noticed the pins going into their legs and beyond. Many of their pins looked like they went in and back out. It was explained to me how those pins were attached to their bones. Their bones had been cut, and their legs were being stretched by the apparatus to lengthen their legs. The tour guide at the time said, "But that's not something that you'll have to worry about." Oh yeah? 2 years later, a nurse was standing in front of me with a clipboard with my name on it. Next to my name, I saw the word Ilazarov. The experience of meeting those boys with the Ilazarovs on their legs was so traumatic that after I got kicked out of the hospital that day, the images were so plastered into my brain that half of my body went numb. My vision went out, and I couldn't talk. I experienced my first full-blown migraine that day. I thought I was dying. I looked at the nurse and I said as bluntly as I could, "There has to be a mistake. I'm not here for an Ilazarov." He took his clipboard back and said, "Well, that's odd. I'll do some checking around. I'll find out what's going on, and I'll get back to you." "You do that," I said firmly, feeling very sure that I was right and he was wrong. I watched him walk down the hallway, and I didn't see him again for the rest of the day. That should have clued me in, and it kind of did. But what happened next definitely caught my attention.